Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Welcome back to News Talk on Samar News. We are going to be talking about the impeachment proceedings against the Philippines Vice President Sara Duterte.
That's right, and it's based on
a recent news
a
article.
recent news article straight from the
This
Philippines.
is for the Philippines.
So we're getting it right from the source.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at all sides
All sides of the story.
of the story. It's really trying to unpack it for everybody listening. So,
exactly.
yeah, one of the most interesting parts of this whole thing is that the vice president has chosen not to appear at the trial yet.
Yeah, that's a really interesting development, I think.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later, but first I think it's helpful to kind of set the stage and give everybody a little bit of background on what exactly is going on.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the accusations, like what's going on here?
So the impeachment complaint basically alleges that there were some serious flaws in the verification process.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't super familiar with Philippine law, can you kind of walk us through how this whole impeachment thing even works?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, it starts with the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And they're the ones who initiate the process. So you can think of it like they're the ones bringing the charges.
Okay.
If they vote to impeach, then the whole thing moves to the Senate for a trial.
Okay, so the Senate's kind of like a jury.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And they're the ones who ultimately decide whether or not to remove the vice president from office.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then there's also the Supreme Court.
Okay.
They also have a part to play in this whole thing. They can step in to review whether or not the process is being handled according to the Constitution and the laws of the Philippines.
Okay, so it's like a whole system with a lot of checks and balances.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So now let's talk about the arguments. What is the impeachment prosecutor, Representative Luistro, saying about all this?
Well, her claim is that the verification process was done by the book. She says that all 215 House members who initially endorsed the complaint followed the rules meticulously.
Wow, 215. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot.
What does that tell us about, like, the political climate surrounding all of this?
Well, I think it suggests that there's significant support for the impeachment within the House.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean that the vice president is guilty.
Right.
But it does give you a sense of the momentum behind this whole thing.
Yeah.
And actually, it's even more than that. Later, another 25 congressmen signed on.
Whoa.
So 240 total.
240 total. That's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
So it definitely seems like there's something serious going on here.
For sure.
Okay, so we know the vice president is not going down without a fight. So what has her response been to all this?
Right. Well, she filed a petition with the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Claiming her right to due process has been violated.
Okay.
She's also said that she has no plans to resign, and at least at this stage, she's not going to appear at the trial.
So not appearing at the trial is a pretty interesting tactic.
It is.
What do you think of the implications of that?
Well, I think it's a really fascinating move. Some people might see it as a sign of guilt.
Okay.
But others might view it as a strategic legal move.
Interesting.
It's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out and how it's perceived by the public.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to, like, what the legal reasoning behind this decision could be.
Yeah, me too.
Like, why would she choose this particular route?
Right. Well, it could be that by challenging the process itself,
Okay.
she's actually aiming to undermine the entire impeachment complaint.
Okay.
So it's a very high-stakes gamble.
Very high stakes.
Yeah, she's basically saying, I'm not even going to participate in a process that I believe is flawed from the start.
Right. Yeah, she's basically taking a stand and saying this whole thing is illegitimate.
Exactly.
So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back, and we were just talking about this vice president's decision to kind of skip out on the trial, at least for now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, could that backfire on her?
Oh, it definitely could.
How so?
Well, if the Supreme Court ultimately rules against her, it could make her look like she's trying to avoid accountability.
Right.
But on the other hand, if they side with her and find that there really were some procedural violations, the whole impeachment case could just crumble.
It's really high stakes.
It is super high stakes.
Yeah, like she's playing legal chess here.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't happening in a vacuum. Like, the whole country is watching this unfold.
Oh, yeah. Public perception is a huge part of this.
Absolutely. And this decision, to skip the trial could really sway public opinion regardless of what happens legally.
That's true. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the Supreme Court rules against her and the trial moves forward.
Okay.
Would she be forced to defend herself at that point?
I mean, she would be in a really tough spot, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, participating would kind of feel like she's legitimizing a process that she thinks is totally flawed.
Right.
But if she continues to boycott the whole thing, it could be seen as defiant or even disrespectful to the Senate.
Yeah, that's a tough call.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, for sure.
Okay, so speaking of the trial itself,
Yeah,
we haven't really talked about what the specific accusations against her are.
that's true.
Like, what are they actually saying she did?
Yeah, you're right. We've been so focused on this whole procedural drama,
Yeah,
but we haven't even gotten into like the substance of the complaint.
right.
And unfortunately, the article that we're working with doesn't really lay out all those details.
Oh, man, come on. I'm dying to know, like, what exactly led 240 congressmen to support this impeachment?
I know, right?
Are we talking corruption, abuse of power? What's the story here?
It's definitely a good question. And believe me, I'm curious too.
Yeah.
But for now, we have to just kind of stick with the information that we do have. And
Okay.
it's clear that, this whole case has sparked a major debate in the Philippines about due process,
Right.
about the power of the legislature, the role of the Supreme Court, all these big questions.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating case, even without knowing all the nitty-gritty details.
Totally.
So one thing I wanted to touch on is the vice president's statement that she welcomes these complaints
Okay.
because it gives her a chance to clear her name.
Right.
That sounds pretty confident, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like she's not backing down at all.
Yeah, it suggests that she's ready to fight back and that she truly believes that she can refute these accusations.
Okay, but then her decision to not show up at the trial seems to contradict that a little bit,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
It's almost like she's saying, I want to respond, but only on my own terms.
Right.
And only if I believe that this process is actually fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile those two positions?
Yeah, that's the real question here.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see how she kind of navigates that as this whole thing continues to unfold.
So we've got this legal battle, this vice president making some pretty bold moves, and the whole country is watching.
It's like a political thriller in real time.
What do you think of the potential consequences of this impeachment case?
Hmm.
Like, regardless of whether she's ultimately found guilty or not.
That's a really great question. And I think it takes us kind of beyond the immediate drama of the situation and into the bigger picture.
Yeah, like how could this impact everyday people in the Philippines?
Exactly. Well, think about it. When there's this much political turmoil, it can create a lot of uncertainty and instability.
Yeah, for sure.
And that can really impact the government's ability to actually function effectively, especially if this drags on for a long time.
Right?
So there could be consequences for everything from the economy to, social programs.
Wow.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, so this isn't just about one person or even one political party.
No, it's not.
It's about the future of the Philippines.
Exactly. And, beyond those more immediate concerns, I think this whole case really forces us to grapple with these bigger questions about accountability and transparency,
Yeah,
and the strength of democratic institutions in the Philippines.
that's a really good point. So, we were talking earlier about the vice president saying that she welcomed the complaints because it gives her a chance to clear her name.
Right, right.
It just seems kind of contradictory,
Yeah.
If she's so confident, why not just go to the trial and prove that she's innocent?
Well, that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she feels so strongly that this process is flawed,
Right.
that she's just not willing to participate.
Even if it means, like, delaying her chance to clear her name?
Yeah, potentially.
Huh. So maybe it's a matter of principle for her.
Could be.
She's standing up for what she believes in, even if it comes with risks.
Right. And I think that speaks to a larger point here about due process. It's
Mhm.
not just about following the procedures.
Right.
It's about making sure that those procedures are actually fair.
And just,
Exactly.
so in this case, she's saying that the way this whole thing was handled violated her rights.
Right, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the Supreme Court decision is going to be so important.
Huge.
It'll set a precedent for how these types of cases are handled in the Philippines.
So no matter what happens, this is going to have ripple effects.
For sure.
It's not just about whether or not she stays in office. It's about the system itself.
Absolutely. It's about the integrity of the whole process.
For our listener, this might seem like a very distant political drama,
Right.
but what does this really mean for the average person of the Philippines?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Imagine you're just living your life, trying to, put food on the table, raise your family,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, the country's leaders are in this huge legal battle.
Uh-huh.
It can create a lot of anxiety,
Definitely.
a lot of uncertainty. Will the government be able to function?
Mhm.
Will this affect the economy?
These are real things that people are worried about. And then there's also the issue of trust in the government.
Oh, for sure.
If people feel like the system is rigged,
Mm-hmm.
that can really damage democracy.
Absolutely. It erodes the faith that people have in these institutions that are supposed to represent them.
So this whole situation really highlights how important it is for people to be informed and engaged.
I completely agree.
We can't just be passive observers.
Nope, we got to understand what's going on.
Exactly.
And how it affects us.
Well, I think this has been a really fascinating look at a really important moment in Philippine politics.
Yeah, it has.
We've covered so much.
We have.
The legal arguments, the political strategies, the potential consequences for the country.
And for the people.
And for the people.
So as we wrap up, I just want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
This whole impeachment case has kind of exposed some vulnerabilities in the Philippine political system. So the question I think we need to be asking ourselves is, what can we do to make those institutions stronger?
So this doesn't happen again.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful question, and one that I hope our listeners will think about.
Yeah, it's a reminder that democracy is something that we have to constantly work at.
It's not just a given.
Nope.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope you learned something new today.
And that you'll keep thinking critically about the world around you.
Exactly. And remember, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep engaging in those conversations that shape our future.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Say?